I don't know what hurt more, the ringing in my palm, or the sound of something breaking inside my chest. 1 second. I was Arden, 26 years old, middle child of an ordinary family in an ordinary world. My biggest worry yesterday had been whether I could afford to fix my old motorbike. I remembered falling asleep in my cramped bedroom, the fan rattling overhead. The next second, my hand was raised midair, and someone was crying. The room around me was unfamiliar, luxurious, cold, sharp-edged like a showroom instead of a home. My fingers were clenched into a fist. My arm trembled, frozen halfway through a strike. In front of me, curled against the wall like something small and hunted, was a man. No, an omega. The word came to me uninvited, slamming into my mind along with memories that weren't mine. A different Arden. An alpha. Wealthy. Powerful. Feared. Cruel. My head throbbed violently. Scenes flashed, this body towering over the same omega, shouting, grabbing, shoving. The omega apologizing. Always apologizing. The word master dripping from trembling lips. I staggered back like I'd touched fire. What? My voice came out deeper than I remembered. Commanding. Not mine. The omega flinched violently at the sound. He was beautiful in a fragile way, soft features, pale skin marred by bruises blooming like dark flowers along his arms. His long lashes were wet with tears. He was curled tightly into himself, trying to make his body smaller, smaller, smaller. I am sorry, master, he whispered hoarsely. I was wrong. Please don't be angry. My stomach dropped. Master? Memories slammed fully into place. This world was divided into alphas, betas, omegas, hierarchies, instincts. Heat. Red. Power. And the Arden whose body I occupied, this alpha had treated his omega spouse like property, like something to discipline, like something disposable. I looked at my own hand again. It was shaking now, not from rage, but from horror. Oh my God, I breathed. The omega Aylen. His name surfaced in my mind like a plea, pressed himself harder into the corner when I stepped forward. No, he gasped, voice breaking. I'll behave, I promise. I won't speak out of turn again. His shoulders were trembling so hard it looked painful. I felt sick. Hey, wait. I raised both hands slowly, palms open. I'm not going to hit you. The words sounded absurd in the air, as if they didn't belong in this house. Aylen's breathing hitched. He didn't look at me. I'm sorry, master. My chest tightened painfully at that word. I'm not. I stopped. What was I supposed to say? I wasn't his master. In this world, legally, socially, biologically, I was. The alpha husband, the owner. The thought made bile rise in my throat. I swallowed hard and forced my voice softer. Aylen, look at me. He shook his head immediately, panic rising again. I'm not angry, I said quickly. I won't touch you. I swear. The word swear felt like a lifeline. Slowly, so slowly, he lifted his face. His eyes were red and swollen. There was a fading handprint on his cheek. That handprint had been mine. Something inside me cracked. I'm sorry, I whispered. He blinked as if he hadn't heard correctly. I'm sorry, I repeated, louder this time, voice unsteady. I shouldn't have. I would never. But that wasn't true, was it? The original Arden would have. Aylen's gaze flickered with confusion. Fear didn't leave it, only mixed with disbelief. Master, he murmured. Don't call me that. The words slipped out before I could stop them. He flinched again, damn it. I exhaled shakily and forced myself to kneel slowly until I was at his eye level. Every instinct in this alpha body screamed at me that kneeling was wrong, that I was lowering myself, that I should command, not plead. I ignored it. I'm not going to hurt you, I said carefully. Not now. Not ever again. The promise felt reckless, but I meant it. Aylen's fingers tightened in his sleeves. Did I displease you in a different way? He asked softly, almost desperately. I can fix it. My throat burned. No, you didn't do anything wrong. That seemed to break him more than anger would have. Tears spilled over silently. I did, he insisted. I must have. Because in his world, pain always had a reason, and the reason was always him. I reached forward instinctively, then froze when he recoiled violently, curling tighter. Right? Of course. I'm just going to help you up, I said gently. Your arm looks hurt. He shook his head quickly. It's fine. Please don't be upset. I wanted to scream. Not at him, never at him, but at the invisible ghost of the man whose life I had inherited. Carefully, I shifted closer. Aylen, I said quietly, you're bleeding. A thin line of red trailed from his elbow. He looked down, as if noticing for the first time. It's nothing, he whispered automatically. It wasn't nothing. I stood slowly and stepped back instead of forward. Okay, I said, thinking fast. How about this? I'll step away. You can stand up on your own. I won't touch you. He stared at me like I had grown another head. I won't touch you, I repeated. After a long, fragile pause, he cautiously uncurled, bracing a hand against the wall. His legs wobbled. I turned slightly to give him space. The bed, I said gently. You should lie down. He hesitated, then took a few small steps. Each movement looked like it hurt. When he swayed dangerously, my body reacted on instinct, reaching out to steady him. He gasped and whispered, I'm sorry, master. The words cut deeper than any weapon. I said, don't call me that, I murmured, softer this time. Call me Arden. His eyes widened. I can't. You can. He shook his head, panic flickering again, right? One step at a time. I helped him sit on the edge of the bed but kept my touch light, careful, like handling glass. He was trembling. Why are you? He whispered faintly. Why am I what? Not angry. Because I'm not him, I thought. Because I'm just a regular guy who grew up eating instant noodles and arguing with my siblings over the TV remote. Because I don't believe anyone deserves this. Instead, I said, because you don't deserve to be hurt. The silence that followed was heavy. Aylen stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. I belong to you, he said quietly, as if explaining something obvious. The words chilled me. No, I said firmly. You don't. In this world's law. He probably did. But I couldn't accept that. He lowered his gaze again, confusion and fear mixing together. I stepped back fully now, putting distance between us. I need to think. I admitted honestly. My head was still buzzing with foreign instincts, territorial urges, dominance curling low in my gut. I hated it. Hated how this body reacted to the scent of Omega distress, not with compassion, but with possessiveness. I forced it down. I'm going to get a first aid kit, I said. I'll leave the door open. That seemed important. Leaving the door open. As I turned to walk away, I heard his fragile voice again. I'm sorry. I stopped. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the unfamiliar walls of a life built on fear. Then I looked back at him. You don't have anything to be sorry for, I said quietly. Not anymore. I didn't know how I had ended up here. I didn't know if I could undo the damage the other Arden had done. But as I stepped out to find bandages with shaking hands, I made one thing clear in my heart. If I was trapped in this alpha's body, then I would use his power differently. Not to break, but to protect. I didn't sleep that night. Aylen lay on the far edge of the bed, curled tightly like he expected to be dragged off at any second. I sat in the armchair across the room, staring at my hands. Every time I closed my eyes, flashes came back, memories that weren't mine. Shouting, shoving. His body hitting the floor. By morning, I couldn't stand it anymore. Aylen, I said softly. He jolted awake instantly, sitting upright to fast. Pain flashed across his face before he masked it. Yes, master. I exhaled slowly. We're going to the hospital. His eyes widened. For a checkup. I added, a full one. His fingers twisted in the blanket. It's not necessary. I'm fine. You're not? The firmness in my voice made him shrink. I forced myself to soften. Please, I said quietly. Just trust me this once. That seemed to confuse him more than anything. Trust. He nodded faintly. The hospital lobby smelled sharp and sterile. People stared when we walked in. I could feel it, the invisible weight of being an alpha. Heads lowered automatically. Nurses straightened. Aylen walked half a step behind me, eyes fixed on the floor. I hated it. At the reception desk, I gave our names. The nurse's polite smile faltered slightly when she saw the fading bruises on Aylen's wrist. We'll arrange a complete examination, she said professionally. Complete. Good. They separated us first. When the nurse led Aylen away, he hesitated and glanced back at me, fear plain in his eyes. I'll be here, I said immediately. He nodded once and disappeared behind the doors. The waiting room felt suffocating. My mind kept replaying everything. I didn't know how much damage the original Arden had done. I didn't know what I would hear. An hour later, they called me into a consultation room. Aylen sat on the examination bed, shoulders hunched. He looked smaller somehow, wrapped in a thin hospital gown. Across from him stood the doctor, an older beta woman with sharp eyes and a deeper frown than I liked. You are his alpha spouse? She asked without preamble. Yes, her gaze hardened. Sit down. I obeyed. She flipped through a digital tablet, jaw tight. I strongly recommend you listen carefully. Something in her tone made my stomach drop. We conducted a full body scan and gland evaluation, she began. Your Omega has multiple untreated injuries. Untreated. The word felt like an accusation. He has two cracked ribs. One shows signs of beginning improper healing. My vision blurred for a second. A broken little finger poorly aligned. It should have been splinted immediately. It has started to set incorrectly. Aylen's head lowered further. And he is severely malnourished. What? My voice came out hoarse. The doctor's eyes snapped to mine. malnourished, vitamin deficiencies, low body mass, chronic stress markers. His omega gland also shows damage from repeated external trauma. My heart pounded violently. Gland damage. In this world, the omega gland was sacred, sensitive, vital. He will require treatment, she continued coldly, including gland stabilization therapy. I couldn't breathe. The doctor's composure cracked slightly then, irritation bleeding through. Why, she demanded sharply, was he not brought in earlier? I had no answer that didn't make me sound like a monster. Because I wasn't here yet. Because someone wearing my face had hurt him. My throat closed. I didn't realize the extent. Her eyes narrowed. To cracked ribs are not subtle, Mr. Arden. Each word hit like a slap. Aylen spoke up suddenly, voice small. It's my fault. I didn't say anything. The doctor turned to him gently. It is not your fault. Then her gaze cut back to me. You are his alpha. You are responsible for his well-being. The weight of that word responsible settled heavily on my shoulders. I understand, I said quietly. I'm not sure you do, she replied bluntly. If his gland damage worsens, it could affect future heats. It could cause chronic pain. It could compromise his health permanently. Future heats. Permanent damage. My hands clenched in my lap. He needs to be hospitalized for at least several days, she said. Rib stabilization, finger splinting, nutritional for therapy, and gland treatment. We'll monitor stress hormones as well. Several days. Do whatever is necessary, I said immediately. The doctor studied me for a long moment, as if trying to reconcile the calm man in front of her with the injuries on her patient. Very well, she said at last. Nurses came in soon after. When they gently took Aylen's hand to examine the broken finger more closely, he flinched automatically and whispered, I'm sorry. The nurse paused. For what? She asked softly. Aylen looked confused by the question. I felt like my chest was splitting open. They fitted a small splint onto his little finger. He winced when they adjusted it. I'm sorry, he murmured again. I stepped closer without thinking. It's okay, I said quietly. It's not your fault. He glanced at me cautiously. When they wrapped his ribs, explaining how the cracks would need rest and monitoring, I saw the faint tremor in his lips. Does it hurt? I asked. He hesitated, then nodded faintly. The doctor gave him mild pain relief. When the foreline was inserted for nutritional therapy, Aylen watched the needle like it was punishment. I wanted to smash something. Instead, I forced myself to stand still. After everything was settled, the doctor addressed me one final time outside the room. I don't care what happens inside your household, she said bluntly. But if he returns here in worse condition, I will be filing a report. The word hung in the air. I understand, I said again. She studied me once more. See that you do. When I walked back into Aylen's hospital room, he was sitting upright in the bed, looking lost. The splint made his hand look smaller, fragile. I pulled a chair closer. You're staying here for a few days, I told him gently. He tensed. Did I cause trouble? No. I shook my head. You need treatment, that's all. He stared at the foreline. It must be expensive. I don't care. Silence fell. After a moment, he whispered, Are you angry? The question was so quiet I almost missed it. No, I said firmly. He searched my face as if looking for cracks in the answer. I should have told you earlier, he added, guilt-lacing every syllable. My chest tightened again. I should have taken you earlier, I replied. That seemed to confuse him deeply. He shifted slightly, wincing from his ribs. Without thinking, I adjusted the pillow behind him carefully. He stiffened but didn't pull away. Progress. I'm sorry, I said quietly, the words tasting inadequate. For everything. He looked at me like he couldn't understand the sentence. I didn't know how to explain that I was not the man who hurt him, but I was still living in that man's shadow. So instead, I made a silent vow sitting beside his hospital bed, watching the steady drip of nutrients into his vein. No one would ever hurt him again. Not this body, not this house, not this world. Even if I had to fight my own instincts every day to prove it. The first week after the hospital discharged Aylen, I learned how to cook. Not because I wanted to impress him. Because the doctor had looked me dead in the eye and said, he needs proper nutrition. So there I was an alpha with a corporate empire and a kitchen I had never used, burning eggs at 6 in the morning. I stared at the smoking pan. Okay, I muttered to myself. Round 2. By the time Aylen shuffled into the dining room moving carefully, because of his healing ribs I had something that resembled breakfast. Oatmeal, scrambled eggs, cut fruit. He froze when he saw the table. I told the staff to rest today, I said quickly. I made this. He blinked like I told him. The sky turned green. You cooked? Don't sound so shocked, I replied dryly. I only almost burned down the house once. For a second, just a second, his lips twitched. It was small, fragile, but it was the first crack in weeks of fear. He sat down slowly. I noticed he still waited for me to eat first. I gently pushed the bowl toward him. You start. He hesitated. I'm not going to get mad, I said softly. That phrase became my routine. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. You're not in trouble. Every day. I helped him change his rib bandages. I adjusted the splint on his little finger when the doctor showed me how. I drove him to every follow-up appointment personally. At first, he flinched at every sudden movement. Even when I reached for the TV remote, his shoulders would tense. So I started narrating everything. I'm grabbing water. I'm moving the chair. I'm standing up. It felt ridiculous. But after the second week, he stopped bracing every time I stood. We started couples therapy too. The psychologist, a calm beta man with patient eyes, made us sit facing each other. Why are you here? He asked me in our first session. To fix what I broke, I answered honestly. Aylen's hands tightened in his lap. Do you believe he can change? The psychologist asked him gently. Aylen didn't answer. Not that day. Not the next session either. But he kept showing up. And I kept showing up. Weeks passed. The bruises faded first. Then the tension in his shoulders eased slightly. Then one morning, while I was attempting pancakes for the first time, I flipped one too enthusiastically. It hit the ceiling. We both stared at it. Then it slowly peeled off and slapped onto the counter. I looked at Aylen. Well, I said solemnly, at least gravity works. There was a beat of silence, and then he laughed. Not a polite breath, not a nervous exhale, a real laugh. Soft, bright, surprised. I stood there holding the spatula like I'd just witnessed a miracle. His hand flew to his mouth as if he wasn't allowed to make that sound. But I saw the way his eyes crinkled, the way his face lit up without fear, and I knew that I would spend the rest of my life chasing that sound. One night, nearly 2 months after the hospital, we sat on the balcony. The air was cool. The city lights flickered below. Aylen was wrapped in a light blanket. His ribs had mostly healed. The splint was gone. The gland treatments were ongoing, but improving. We sat side by side, not touching, but close. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. Anything. He hesitated. Why did you change? The question was simple, heavy. I couldn't tell him the truth that I wasn't the same soul who hurt him. So I chose honesty in a different way. I didn't like who I was, I said softly, and I realized if I kept going, I would lose you completely. He stared at the city. I thought, maybe you hated me. I never hated you, I replied immediately. Silence stretched between us. Then he said, almost shyly, before marriage, I wanted to continue school. My heart tightened. College? I asked gently. He nodded. I had 1 semester left. 1 semester. And it had been taken from him. What did you study? I asked. Literature, he said, and there was a flicker of something in his eyes. I wanted to work in publishing, or maybe teach. The idea of him standing confidently in front of a classroom felt so right it hurt. You still want that? I asked. He looked at me uncertainly. Is it possible? Of course it is. He blinked. You want to go back? I pressed gently. His fingers tightened around the blanket. Yes, he whispered. That was all I needed. The next morning, I took him to his old college. The campus was quiet, trees lining the walkways. I watched Aylen's expression carefully as we stepped out of the car. He looked like he was stepping into a memory. Students passed us, chatting, laughing. He slowed down. I never thought I'd come back, he murmured. You're not just coming back, I said. You're finishing. We met the head of the literature department, a gray-haired professor with sharp glasses. Re-enrollment after withdrawal can be complicated, the professor began. I understand, I said calmly. What would make it uncomplicated? He blinked. I'd also like to donate $100 million to fund the library renovation, I added casually. The professor nearly dropped his pen. Aylen stared at me in shock. I believe literature deserves proper support, I continued smoothly. By the end of the meeting, paperwork was expedited. Aylen would resume classes next month. When we stepped outside, he turned to me, eyes shining. You didn't have to. I wanted to, I interrupted. His voice trembled. Why? Because your dreams matter. He looked like he didn't know what to do with that answer. The following week, I took him shopping for school supplies. He wandered the stationery aisle like it was a treasure trove. Notebooks, pens, highlighters. He held up to planners, indecisive. Get both, I said. He laughed softly. That's unnecessary. Then it's perfect. Watching him choose things for himself without fear of asking permission felt like watching someone slowly breathe again after being underwater too long. On his first day back, he stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. You look amazing, I said. He glanced at me. nervous. What if they remember? Then they'll see how far you've come, I replied. I drove him to campus. This time, he didn't walk half a step behind me. He walked beside me. When he got out of the car, he hesitated. Will you pick me up later? He asked softly. I smiled. Of course. He nodded, then turned and walked toward the lecture hall. He didn't look back. I didn't need him to. That afternoon, I arrived 10 minutes early. When he finally came out, holding books against his chest, his face was glowing. How was it? I asked. They're discussing modern poetry this week, he said excitedly. And Professor Liang remembered me. He climbed into the car without waiting for permission. He talked the entire drive home, and I listened. Weeks ago, he had whispered apologies from a hospital bed. Now he debated literary themes in the passenger seat of my car. The difference wasn't magic. It was choice. Every day, I chose not to be the man this body once was. And every day, Aylen chose little by little to believe me. When he laughed at another one of my terrible jokes that evening, I realized something quietly, fiercely certain. I hadn't just helped him return to school. We were both starting over. A year can change everything. When Aylen went back to college, I went back to school just in a different way. On his first day of classes, after I dropped him off and watched him disappear into the lecture hall, I drove straight to the company headquarters. The glass building reflected the morning sun like it always had. Employees bowed their heads as I passed. Assistants stiffened. The old Arden had ruled this place with intimidation. I decided I would earn it instead. Even though my major in my previous life had been business management, this wasn't a small-town company project. This was a corporate empire spanning industries I barely understood. The memories in this body gave me access, but not competence. So I started from the bottom. I requested department reports personally. I sat in on entry-level meetings. I asked junior staff to explain processes. Some executives looked offended. Sir, you don't need to concern yourself with this level, one director said cautiously. I do, I replied, because I wasn't him. I stayed late reviewing numbers. I relearned systems. I asked questions I wasn't ashamed to ask. And slowly, something shifted. Fear turned into curiosity. Curiosity turned into respect. Somewhere in the middle of spreadsheets and strategy sessions, an idea formed: VR gaming. In my previous world, virtual reality had been exploding. Immersive storytelling, social spaces, education platforms. In this world, the technology existed, but no one had pushed it fully into entertainment and narrative depth. I saw it clearly. We're expanding, I announced during a board meeting. Interactive VR games. Story-driven. Full immersion. The board stared. It's risky, one of them said. So was every breakthrough, I replied calmly. I built a team from scratch. Programmers, narrative, designers, hardware engineers, artists. I recruited young talent who weren't afraid to experiment. Our brainstorming sessions were chaotic and electric. For a year, that project consumed me. But no matter how late the meetings ran, no matter how complex the negotiations became, I never missed picking Aylen up. Not once. Every afternoon, I parked outside the university. Students would glance curiously at the black car. And then he would walk out. At first, he carried books nervously, scanning the area as if checking whether I was truly there. By the third month, he came out laughing with colleagues. By the sixth month, students began greeting him as Professor Aylen. The first time I heard it, my chest swelled so fiercely I thought I might burst. He had finished college with honors. Then the university offered him a teaching position. You're officially stealing my heart again, I told him the night he got the offer. He rolled his eyes, smiling. Your jokes are still bad, and yet you married me. He paused at that. Technically, we were married, but it had been nothing more than paperwork at a civil bureau. No ceremony, no celebration, just signatures and silence. Back then, it hadn't been love. A year after I opened my eyes in this world, I booked an entire restaurant for the evening. Soft golden lights, quiet music, a private balcony overlooking the river. Aylen looked confused when we arrived. Is there an event? He asked. Yes, I said. Our anniversary. He blinked. But it's been 1 year, I said quietly, since everything changed. He studied me carefully, as if sensing the weight in my voice. Dinner was warm and easy. He told me about a student who had misinterpreted a poem so dramatically that it turned into an accidental comedy. I laughed harder than necessary, because I was nervous. After dessert, I asked the staff to give us privacy. The balcony doors closed softly behind them. Aylen leaned against the railing, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. You're quiet, he said. There's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time. He straightened slightly. I didn't know if he would believe me, I admitted. Or if it would make you afraid. His expression softened. You can tell me anything. I took a breath. I'm not the same Arden you married. He stilled. I mean that literally. And then I told him. About my old world. About falling asleep in a small bedroom. About waking up mid-swing in a body that wasn't mine. About two genders, only men and women. No alphas. No omegas. No heat cycles. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, the night felt impossibly quiet. So, in your world, he said slowly, there is no heat. No rut. No. His eyes widened faintly. And omegas don't exist. He leaned back against the railing, trying to process it. That sounds peaceful, he murmured. No suppressants. No gland treatments. No fear during heat. I nodded. He looked at me curiously. Then how, children? I hesitated. Only women can give birth. There was a pause. Then Aylen laughed. A full, bright laugh that echoed against the river. So even in your world, men can't do everything, he teased. I smiled helplessly. Apparently not. Silence settled again, softer this time. Do you regret coming here? He asked quietly. I stepped closer. If coming here meant becoming the man who hurt you, yes, I swallowed. But if coming here meant becoming the man who loves you, my voice faltered. Then no. His eyes shimmered. I took one step back, then another, and then I dropped to my knees. Aylen gasped softly. From my pocket, I pulled out a small velvet box. I can't erase what the old Arden did, I said, looking up at him. I can't undo your pain, but I can promise you something. I opened the box. A simple, elegant ring caught the light. Will you marry me? I asked. Not the old Arden. Not the man who signed papers in a cold office. My voice trembled. But me. The man who burns pancakes. The man who waits outside your classroom. The man who loves you. Tears spilled down his cheeks. Our first marriage, he whispered. There was no wedding. No vows. Then let's have them now, I said softly. He covered his mouth, shoulders shaking. For a terrifying second, I wondered if I had pushed too far. Then he stepped forward. Yes, he breathed. Yes, the word broke something open inside me. I slid the ring onto his finger with shaking hands. He pulled me up before I could say anything else and wrapped his arms around me. For a moment, we just stood there, holding each other under the city lights. A year ago, I had woken up in a nightmare. Now, kneeling in front of the man who once curled in fear at my feet, I realized something simple and overwhelming. This world had given me a second life, and he had given me a reason to deserve it.